So we just got the official release for Anime Expeditions. And as somebody who's been putting lots of time into the game during early access, I wanted to point out some of the big mistakes that I'm seeing players make. Kinda like a guide video for new players, hopefully you guys find it helpful. If you do, maybe if you like or subscribe, I would really appreciate it because I'm getting into Anime Expeditions content. But anyways, let's get into it. Alright, hello guys. So I've been playing a lot of Anime Expeditions, I've been live streaming it pretty much every day. And in those live streams, I've been getting a lot of questions or seeing people make mistakes that I want to go over in this video. So think of this as like a beginner's guide, but kind of more focused on certain points. First thing I want to talk about is the banner. If you're wondering who to roll off banner, I of course have a tier list on my channel. But certain things about the summoning banner you might not know when you're starting this game. First one is that you have to be level 10 to be able to pull Megami, the Seeker unit from banner. So I recommend saving a lot of your gems until at least after level 10. And then also, I would never recommend rolling on the mini banner, even if there's a unit you want in the middle, for example Yuta's right here. But rolling on the mini banner is like never worth it, because as of right now, the Seeker units are kind of the best units in the game. That would be Kenpachi and Megami. On that note, I do think a lot of people have the wrong idea of Kenpachi. I've seen people saying that after you complete the story, you should immediately go into raids and farm for Kenpachi. That is just not true, okay? I don't recommend any new player farms for Kenpachi. As someone who did farm for Kenpachi, and has been investing all my rerolls into him, I gotta say that this guy is not worth it unless you get unbound, okay? I've gotten every other trait on this guy already, and he's just not very usable. If I were to compare his damage, for example, at max upgrade for 92,000 yen, I don't know, I have a crit trait on Gother and he kind of competes with Kenpachi's DPS. This is a 2 placement that costs 92,000 to max out. That's kind of my point of emphasis here. Kenpachi is very expensive. If you don't have Unbound on this guy, you can't really use him. That is one thing I want to clear up. A lot of people say as soon as you clear the story, just go for Kenpachi because he's really good. He's only good if you go and get yourself Unbound, like I finally have right here. Now, as a new player, regardless of what units you end up going for, you eventually have to evolve them, right? And some units are easier to evolve than others, but general rule of thumb, your first evolution when you're starting out in this game can be kind of difficult. Of course, I'd immediately recommend doing your daily challenge and your weekly challenge if you can. There is in-game matchmaking, so you can always get help. But aside from challenges, whether you like use up your daily limit or just can't clear them, there's one pretty important way to evolve units early game that'll help you out a ton. You should always take advantage of the events going on, and I think most people kind of flock towards just buying as many rerolls as they can. But don't do that, okay? Don't just buy rerolls. I'd say it's very helpful as a new player to buy sprites if you need them. Also, you should get your first evolved unit, that's kind of the hard part. Or even if you really need equipment rerolls, you can always buy these from the event shop. But I don't know, I've seen a lot of people that just kind of dump all their event coins into trait crystals, and that kind of slows their progression, which is not very good. Otherwise, I think probably one of the biggest mistakes you can make in the entire game, and I'm guilty of this one, is at level 20, when you unlock something called the Expedition Hub. Most people kind of just ignore it for a little bit, okay? I personally didn't grind the expeditions until like level 50 or 60, but I'd recommend doing this as soon as you can. Again, you unlock it at level 20, but the expedition game mode, okay, if I had to explain it, is kind of like a little Clash of Clans base where you upgrade little buildings, and these buildings are very important for progression. We have like a resource drill, so you can kind of set this up, and over time, you get free loot, which in this one I got kind of unlucky, but the most important thing about expeditions, and why I think everyone needs to be kind of on top of the game mode, is the armory. Okay, this is probably the most important thing in the game past like level 40 and onward. You gotta be doing this. If you get your armory to level 2, you can craft any relic in the game, and they're pretty cheap. You just gotta farm some sprites and some equipment scrap you get from expeditions. So this will help out a lot for building your team, especially if you don't want to farm for something to 20 pity. But also, some of the relics are craft only. I think some of them are really good, like this one. Can't get it anywhere but crafting right now, and it's a 15% damage buff. So you definitely want to get your armory upgraded as soon as you can to be able to craft this stuff. And aside from just crafting relics, you need to be rerolling your equipment, because the average equipment you find if you farm for it is going to have horrible stats, okay? This one has a 0% of the buff, 11% of the buff. You want to be re-rolling your equipment to hopefully get upwards of like 90% of the buffs you can get. At least 50 is a good baseline, so at least like legendary rarity is what I like to keep. Yeah, this is probably the most important thing in the game after level 40. I see a lot of people neglecting this. Personally, I neglected the expedition game mode, and I wish I was doing this sooner, okay? The armory is very important to upgrade early on. If you're wondering what builds to use, here's what I use on my people. Mostly just the Shinigami sword and the kunai on my damage unit, so all my builds right here are as follows. Overall, if you're a new player, just make sure you pay attention to relics because they're very important late game. You don't want to fall behind and have to do a lot of catching up later. Other than that, I don't want to make this like a full beginner's guide video and hold your hand while playing a tower defense game. I feel like most people know how to play these, right? But I guess one little bit of advice and one mistake I see people making that I want to talk about. And this one should be pretty obvious, but I want to emphasize how much it applies to certain units, which in this case Yuta we're talking about. The 0.1% unbound is not always the best trade. Like my Ice Mage, for example, okay, it's not the best trade on this guy, if you can believe it. And I really want to emphasize this for Yuta, because this is a very meta-relevant unit that a lot of people will use. And I see so many people getting unbound on this guy, which is not bad, you know, unbound still. Unbound at the end of the day saves you money from having to max out 3 Yutas, really good for progression. But really, if you look at Yuta's passives, he doesn't want unbound like at all. First up, the Cursed Mimicry. The biggest value of this passive is that the follow-up attack deals 40% of the closest unit's current damage. So if you place Yuta down next to a really strong unbound unit, he's going to scale off their damage and do some crazy stuff. So right off the bat, it is way better to have 3 Yutas down that are kind of spamming the 40% closest damage. But even aside from the follow-up attack support thing, Yuta's personal damage, you don't want to have unbound on him. Because of the Spirit Bat's passive here, you want to kind of build up stacks of bleed in Yuta's range, which he's going to do naturally. And the more placements you have of Yuta, obviously the more bleed he's building up. So the more Yutas you have placed down, the more bats you can kind of spawn in, which are really how you ramp up most of his damage. So I don't know, this might be tough news to hear, but overall if you roll unbound on Yuta, you probably want to get a different Yuta that doesn't have unbound. His best trait for personal damage is Draconic because he is a bleed unit. But I think overall if you're using this guy with any other unbound unit on your team, Yuta's best trait is probably Forsaken. Not because bleed can crit or anything, okay, I've already tested that. Damage over time effects do not crit in this game unless you're in the expedition and roll a certain card. But pretty much late game, if you have like other unbound units, you're using Yuta as more of a support for his follow-up attack thing. And if you give him Forsaken, he's going to be doing the 40% of the other unit's damage, and that damage will be able to crit. So he's really scaling up somebody else's damage, which in my case could be like a Kenpachi, for example. If I max out a Kenpachi next to Yuta, his follow-up attacks will scale off of 40% of 40k. So overall, that is a huge mistake I see in the meta right now. Do not roll unbound on this unit. If you do, it's not the end of the world, it'll help you with progression. But you want to aim for a Yuta with either Draconic or Forsaken. Anyways, aside from the main point of this video, the advice I just gave for new players, hopefully that was kind of helpful. I don't know. I do want to also give my review of the game. So far, as someone who has played for 63 hours, I do think this game is very fun. If it makes sense, I think this game kind of takes the good parts of like every big tower defense. For example, like the star system when you clear story from Anime Reborn, I always thought that was kind of cool. I don't know if it's originally from Anime Reborn, but I know that game had it. In general, like the UI from ALS with the upgrade icons here, and which kind of in-game looks like ALS a little bit. And of course the ghost placements feature from ALS where you can like pre-place a unit before you have money. It has like the visual quality aspect of AV and the ascensions from AV. And personally I would say it has like the non-copyright model quality of Anime Defenders. You know, these non-copyright models do actually look really good, even if they're kind of different from their original characters they're based on. So overall, if I had to kind of give my summary or opinion of this game, I think it's kind of like a combination of a lot of the tower defenses we've seen so far, you know, nothing too different, but everything is really high quality, really polished for release. Okay, usually on tower defense releases, there's like a lot of bugs and stuff is all broken, stuff is really wonky, they end up changing a bunch of stuff in like 2 updates later. In my experience with this game, it feels like it is in a very good spot. I haven't ran into like any bugs besides the first day of Early Access Plus and they ended up patching them. This game just feels really well made and really high quality. Gameplay wise, there's not too much different from normal tower defenses. As I mentioned, it feels like a combination of every big tower defense in a way. I do think though that the expedition game mode is pretty fun, so that's a bonus, but I don't know, my overall opinion of this game is that it probably is the next big tower defense. I think it's really fun. I've already been putting a bunch of time into it and I think I'll probably end up putting more, because this game is just really fun. Anyways though, that's all for the new players mistakes video, and also my review of the game so far. I hope you guys found it helpful, or just interesting, I don't know. Either way, thank you to my channel members for making the video possible. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you in the next one. Have a great day.